says replace window air conditioning with climate control units, carrier units piped into building with, and it ends.
It ends.
I have the same thing as you. Number 6, just alerting the board that there will be a layoff of a 17-hour position in the library effective July 1st. And this is necessary to meet the funding obligations that were approved in the fiscal 2010 budget. The action is necessary after reviewing the applicable sections of the collective bargaining agreement and meeting with library personnel and union representatives last week. It had been originally hoped that the layoff could be avoided by a reduction in hourly reduction for all personnel employed by the library. In fact, after meeting with the union, that is not possible and that is not achievable.
Not possible because they won't agree to it?
That's correct.
Shame on them.
That's correct. So the intent here is there would be actually a reduction in hours or a reduction in pay for employees, and that was proved not to be successful. So we will have it. You have a copy of the draft letter that we've sent out.
What's the dollar amount of this, Greg?
Total dollars.
What was the amount that we had to reduce the budget by?
It's interesting because the reduction is for 5 hours a week. But the position is funded at 17 hours, but the position works on it not necessarily a regular basis. So this is what will happen is the remaining hours will be distributed amongst the remaining staff that's there. So it's really the only way of achieving it. In terms of the dollars associated with this position, I don't recall off the top of my head. I just don't recall.
Could you have that for us
Yep.
in the next meeting?
So this was a union decision.
Yeah. Yeah, we met.
Essentially, low man on the totem pole got cut, and the remaining employees were picking up extra hours,
Couldn't have been.
earning greater income, as opposed to saving someone's job.
That's right. That's right.
Pretty bad precedent that this union has set. It's unfortunate.
Board members, last on my report, and I just have one other verbal update to provide. I apologize, it's something that I hadn't thought of. I did attend the municipal hearing officer training last week. It's run by the Mass Department of Fire Services. As the designated hearing officer, the town can avail itself to written citations under General Law, Chapter 148 for fire and safety code violations. Any appeals will be presented to the town administrator. What that means is, you'll recall the nightclub fire in Warwick, Rhode Island several years ago resulted in a significant loss of life. Commonwealth of Massachusetts reacted by setting forth a number of fire code safety requirements, sprinkler systems, and other safety issues. And as part of that, they empowered local fire departments to issue citations for businesses that were not in compliance with the current law. Those citations, when they're issued, can be appealed. In this case, they're appealed to the town administrator. And ultimately, if someone's unhappy with my decision, that can be appealed up to the courts. So it's there's not necessarily any cost to the town, but if we wish to avail ourselves to the opportunity to write citations, we have to go through the training process and involve just a couple of hours worth of effort. That's it, but Mr. Chairman, I didn't know what you wanted to I just wanted to address briefly, without getting into too much detail, as the chairman and I had an opportunity to meet with the Mass Office of Business Development a week ago, and we talked about different economic development incentive programs available to businesses in North Reading, and I think it was a good door opener to see what programs are out there and programs that may avail themselves to North Reading. The goal of it obviously is to provide potential relief to businesses, relief in terms of encouraging investment and having that new investment not necessarily subject to 100% taxation, and in turn creating jobs in the area. And the CPC planner Heidi Griffin was kind enough to arrange a meeting, and I think it was a good overview of the economic development incentive program. I would suggest that the gentleman from Mass Office of Business Development be invited into one of your upcoming meetings and give a similar overview to the board, because obviously any decisions that come down the road related to a particular business or development proposal will need to be presented to this board, and there may be implications in terms of potential for a tax increment financing agreement. Tax increment financing is allowed under the law. It does require approval of town meeting, and it does also require approval of the Board of Selectmen. So just a heads up that this is something that's being looked into.
I attended the meeting. It was Mr. Peter Milano, who's the Senior Regional Director, visited. What I learned was that they've been very much involved, the state has, in dealing even with the Gutierrez property associated with trying to find appropriate businesses to come into town. And what Mr. Milano would like to do is present to the board at a future meeting we can set up to go over what we went over and answer your questions associated with the various incentive programs. In other words, we have to do something to enable the state to provide incentives to some of these businesses to move into town. I think it certainly fits some of our goals associated with increasing commercial development. So I'm going to ask the town administrator through Heidi to set up a meeting at as early as we can set up a meeting schedule, Mr. Milano.
I'll be in touch with him. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Bob, can I get a copy of that at some point?
Sure. See if we can get a copy here. Yeah, I will say that, what they were talking about is property at, is it that river? No, is it River Court? Is that what it's called? The, building.
It's River, I can't think of what the name of it is either.
Anyway, it's the complex off of
Concord Street?
Concord Street, right. Anything else, Greg?
No, I would ask an opportunity to address matters pertaining to collective bargaining in the executive session.
Stop. Mr. Delaney,
That would be,
all the new business.
apparently I made a mistake when I applauded the efforts of the DPW cleaning up after the Relay for Life function that took place at the high school track and field complex. I was corrected, and I want to applaud the efforts of the custodial staff of the school department, who, through great efforts, cleaned up that location in record-setting time. So, apologize for the error, but I do congratulate that staff. Also, I know a couple other members of the board had an opportunity to recently speak to John Norton, who works for Coda Funeral Home, concerning the decision by this board to consolidate the polling places. And there was an issue raised by Mr. Norton concerning if a funeral take place at the same time, the same date that elections were to be conducted down at that location with one polling place for the whole community. His concern was the parking availability for those at the funeral. I appreciated his concerns, but I expressed to him that I think there's things that we could be doing in order to anticipate that from happening. Shouldn't preclude us from moving forward. But I do think he raised a good issue in that we should be proactive in setting up some sort of parking arrangement if the event takes place where there's an election as well as a funeral at St. Teresa's.
I've noted that on Sundays, a lot of people park across the street in the Stop and Shop parking lot. Perhaps some arrangement can be worked out with them.
Great. And I think on an average funeral, he cited a couple examples where they've had 100 cars. I guess they had a funeral last Saturday, it was 100 cars. It became an issue over there at St. Teresa's. But typically, that Erie can hold up to 70 vehicles, I believe, with a funeral and an election. Apparently, there is no plan in place currently, even though there's 2 precincts out of St. Teresa's, as we all know, for an election. But they are able to handle up to 70 cars without interfering with any entrance or exit from what would be the east side of St. Teresa's. But I do think you raised a good issue, and that we should be proactive in addressing that issue if it should occur. Also, I'd like to congratulate Tom Fitzgerald, who is a resident in town and an assistant coach with the Pittsburgh Penguins and their win of the Stanley Cup this past Saturday night. Tom was a 17-year veteran of the National Hockey League, and he's a great contributor to the community. So I congratulate him and his team. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Vino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, continuing on Mr. Delaney's comments about being contacted, I of course was also contacted about the situation by John and others. What I would like to request, Greg, is to see the parking plan that we plan on using. I know we approved it, and I voted against it, as we well know. But, and I mentioned that night, I have not seen what they plan to do, and numerous people have asked me, and my answer has been, I have no idea. I know there was talk about a lane down, parking with a lane down the middle or something. So, if we could, I don't know who's gonna make it up, or design it, but if we could get that so that we would have an answer for the public, be able to answer some of the questions.
I can answer partially. If you notice, there's diagonal lines. If you're facing the church on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side is the same way.
Right.
They were going to run a line, a rope line, or something down the center of that, so that people could pull into diagonal parking spaces up against the line. And if those were full, drive around this way, and now the line's coming in the other way.
This is what I want to see.
But that's what
Because,
they, I haven't seen,
yeah,
what
that'll
they
be worse,
achieved,
but that's why I want to see it.
that's
'Cause
what
then
they
you
were
can-
proposing.
Because then you're gonna have people coming out and trying to get in the same thing after certain. That's why I'd like to see it, so we can have some idea if it ever could work, or will work. And on another note, summer's getting here, slowly but surely, and I'd just like to remind everyone, there's gonna be a lot of children out playing shortly. School's gonna be getting out, and you're just gonna have children playing where you don't normally see them. Side roads, main roads, all the roads. So if everyone could just use a little more care when we're driving around. Thank you.
Jeff?
Yes, I too had a variety of conversations with some people in town with regard to the consolidation of the voting locations, and their concern was the parking scenario as well. And once I described how we were going to look at roping the area off and making it more of a flow-through scenario, they understood. They understood that the traffic would flow much better, and that seemed to ease their concern. I too spoke with John Norton as well. This past weekend, I went to the MMA Selectmen seminar for rookies, and it was very informative. I've learned an awful lot at the seminar. And then I also went to, on Sunday morning, I attended the fireman's service on Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, and it was wonderful to see how united the firemen are about the members of the fire department and the people that they work with very closely on a day-to-day basis. The middle school 8th grade is now in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be visiting the White House, and it's going to be very exciting for them. amongst the other historical sites that they're going to